welcome to another special bonus edition of the Paul Ryder tapes. I'm Angela Smith, I'm the ex-wife of Paul Ryder. These bonus episodes feature the full-length versions of the interviews that I did for the main series. This episode features the second interview that I did with Monday's drummer Gaz Whelan. Gaz and Paul were like brothers, ones that actually got on, and Gaz was one of the most special people in Paul's life. I caught up with him as he was rehearsing with his side project Yogi G and the Family Tree in Latch's Tough Gong studio in Warrington.
Oh shit, Phil, sorry. Oh, it's alright. Is it okay if it's because yeah.
So tell me about... Sorry, hang on, I forgot to press record on the Zoom.
Hey!
Recording in progress.
It doesn't matter because Phil's recording you and we've got... It's just... So anyway, sorry.
One second, I'm just turning all the PA out.
Is that Latch?
It is.
Hey, we were putting your...
Don't get him talking! For God's sake.
We were putting your story in the podcast the other day, your dating story. Very, very, very funny.
Did you see that? Very funny.
You are funny for the first hour.
He's got a lot. Got to get on my tits.
Oh, God, right pair of wings.
I'll leave you to
it. So my mum and Linda, Paul's mum, Linda Ryder, probably first met at one of the early Mondays gigs, probably one of the big ones because they weren't allowed to come to any other gigs. We didn't like family coming, apart from obviously Derek was always there. And then they hit off straight away. I think they had a mutual liking of alcohol and music and rock and roll. So every Wednesday night, my mum used to go down to Linda's house for what they call Rock and Roll Wednesdays. And my mum would drink a bottle of rum and Linda would drink a bottle of vodka, and they would play rock and roll music. And that went on for 30 odd years they've been doing that, yeah, to this day. And they wonder where we get it from, eh? You know what? If you've seen the Leonard Cohen documentary, the last one, I can't remember what it's called, and it says, there's a woman on it talking about, she says, musicians and writers and all that, she went, you can always tell, she said, with the males, because they always have crazy mothers.
Really? Oh, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it was very close. I mean, like early on when we used to go do all the gigs, like obviously Derek did everything, sound, drove, loaded the equipment, did everything. And Linda used to always make us sandwiches for the trip, and because I didn't eat meat, she used to say, there's some cheese for Gaz. So it was great. So it was all very, back then we were all very close. It was all, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but we were.
And you called her the Butty Queen.
You said that, not me.
You did. You called her the. Even Paul called her the Butty Queen.
Yeah, the Butty Queen. You want John at Butter? Yeah, that's used to be the.
I find it really hard to fathom that Linda and your mum are 80, like they're old ladies now, technically, but they're not. I can't relate to them like old ladies. It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, they're not, are they? Yeah, no, yeah. My mum, that she says, has got more going than me. Like, she says, like, what's your perfect night out? And I say, well, sat in a pub, in an old man's pub, about 4 people there, with a pint of Guinness and a book. And she's like, you're bloody boring, you. Get out partying. And like, she goes out and has her friends and dances and all that. And I'm like, oh, don't want noise. I'm like, Paul, don't want noise. I'm not here to sit there reading my book and drinking my Guinness on my own.
So, talk to me a little bit about how close... Paul mentioned that you were particularly close to Derek growing up. Like, he was almost as much as a father figure to you as your own father, because you had you were together so often. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Well, when we started, don't forget, I was 15, 16, so Derek was the one that... we didn't know what we were doing. He knew how to set up. We didn't know how to plug in. I mean, the first drum kit I got, Derek set it up for me, and he'd tune it for me. So I don't know, and then he was driving the van, he was touring, he was doing everything. And I look back, it was easy for me and Mark. Mark worked with him, so Mark was very close to him, and I got on with him. I thought he was funny, but it must have been hard for Paul and Shaun, you know what I mean, to have the dad around all the time. He must have, I never thought about that, but it must have been really difficult. It must have been really hard for him. For me, it was easy. So I think I had one argument with Derek in all the time and that was over nothing. I never argued with him. It was easy for me, but it must have been hard for Shaun and Paul.
Did Shaun and Paul argue with him? Like, did they have like father-son type dynamic?
Shaun did more than Paul. Paul was a little bit more relaxed, and I think Paul got on with him more, but Shaun clashed with him more. I think Shaun and Derek were more similar. Paul was a little similar as well, but Shaun clashed more.
Was Derek related to by the crew as one of the crew, or as Paul and Shaun's dad? Like, how?
That's a good question. Yeah, he wasn't really. It got to the point where we forgot he was the dad. I mean, that they didn't, but we kind of did. Well, yeah, there was always loads of in-jokes and all that kind of thing, but it was always really respected. We always had loads of respect for him, and we used to joke about him and all that, because we was a different generation. But it was only kind of harmless stuff. It was never any, because we'd screwed without him. We would have screwed without him.
Talk to me about the rivalry between the brothers.
That's a strange one, because they kind of both would never admit there was one, and maybe that's a good question. It's hard to say from the outside. Well, I'm sorry, from the inside, sorry, because I didn't really see any competition until they were much older. I didn't notice it until much older. I just thought brothers. I had a younger brother. I didn't talk to him. So, and I was younger, so they all kind of looked at me as just a little bit of a kid, maybe. So, it's kind of difficult. I don't know. I was closer to Paul, so they would get into arguments and like literally fist fights. And Mark, because he's big, would jump in the middle of them. And I had 2 fights with Shaun. Never had any fights with Paul. But that doesn't mean I got on with Shaun as well. Early on in the early days, I got on with Paul. But they had a kind of. I don't feel early on. There didn't seem to be a rivalry. Paul was in charge of the band early on, and I think Shaun was quite happy with that. Paul was one that was really serious about it all. I think Shaun, I would say it wasn't serious, but it was a bit more carefree about it. So I didn't really see a rivalry early on.
Can you remember what the cause of any of those fights were? Can you remember?
It'd probably been over nothing. On the last one they had was when we was in the Amazon jungle, and the argument was over who had the biggest belly. And they actually had the bellies out, and they were like, my belly's bigger than mine's bigger than yours.
No way.
And seriously, true. It started off about something else that ended up who had the biggest belly.
Did it ever bother you though that when you saw the relationship between the two of them deteriorating? Did it bother you? Did it affect you in any way?
The relationship between us all deteriorated. You know what really weird? And this is a real other cliche. Mark always kept himself on the outside, away from it all, wisely. But me, PD, Paul and Shaun were very close, and then Bez when he came in. Bez was always a free bird doing his own thing. And I think early on, and it's different. Shaun being a singer and not playing an instrument, he was kind of outside from us, so it kind of me and Paul being really, and PD being really close, then Shaun and Bez. Accidentally, and so them two not getting on, yeah, it did. But there was a kind of a bit of that with all of us. And like I say, it was really, and this is a real cliche, but I didn't have an older brother, I had an older sister, so Paul was like an older brother to me. And I know that's a real cliche, but it really was. It really was. Like I said, we were very close and got on. And then we fell out over silly things, but he was like an older brother to me. So it was a band thing that I didn't really. Honestly, I didn't see it as them two were. In fact, I didn't see him as brothers in the band. Not until after we reformed, probably, and we'd split up. Really didn't see him as brothers in a band, just 2 different members.
And they weren't alike in any sense, really, were they?
None of them, all had the same sense of humour. We all had a very similar sense of humour. Shaun was Paul was the quiet. You see, it's kind of weird because Paul was a quiet. You think Paul was a quiet one, and Shaun was the loud one, and that was, on the surface that was the case. But they were both. All of us were shy. Some of us were loud. Some of us weren't. So they were very similar but very different as well. Like me and Paul were very similar but very different, and Shaun and Paul were very similar but very different. We all kind of like the same things.
Was Shaun shy deep down, would you say?
I think Shaun shied it down, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think even Bez is probably. Mark isn't. Mark's not shy. But me, PD and Paul were definitely insecure and... Not insecure, probably wrong, shy. I think Shaun's shy as well. Yeah, I think Shaun... Yeah, I think he's shy.
Do you not think everybody in the whole world is shy? It's just how well you mask it.
You know what, probably, yeah. Some people with bravado, but some people... no, a lot of people are. Certainly a lot of people in the arts. Yeah, maybe you're right, yeah. But we definitely had a lot of imposter syndrome. I don't think we ever expected to do anything. Paul probably did. He had inner ambitions, but we probably didn't. And I think once we made it, we expected it to implode at any point. And I don't think Paul did. Paul saw this as what he wanted and wanted it to carry on, you see. Maybe.
Do you think the tensions between Shaun and Paul ultimately added to the magic of the band? Or do you think it detracted?
I personally think it detracted. Maybe at some level, I think so.
So if there hadn't been that tension between them, how do you think things would have been different?
Yeah, it's hard to say. We did okay, so maybe boring, so maybe I'm contradicting myself. It's a tough one, yeah. It would escalate quickly and they'd get into like fist fights and it was kind of uncomfortable, you know, it wasn't nice to be around. But musically I don't think it had an effect, but I think communication-wise it did. But with all of us, you know, I think we did the music and Shaun did the lyrics and singing. And I look back and I think, well, he must have felt as an outsider. You know, I didn't think that at the time. I used to think, oh, don't be daft, you know, but I mean, looking back, maybe he did. And I think just maybe we didn't share enough to get each other. To get your opinion across, you had to fight for it rather than discuss it. I think that, you know, because, which is a shame, you know what I mean? There's, you know, or compromise so it didn't cause an issue between us all, so. Like I say, I was thinking about this, we didn't see him as brothers in the band, it was just two different members of the band.
Do you think that it was more serious than your regular sibling rivalry or sibling spats? Like, do you think there was a darker, deeper thing going on?
Yeah, I mean, in a band together, so if you oh, what, you sound pretentious, you're creating art together, there's going to be, isn't there? So, I don't know. They were close in age, weren't they? What's the difference about?
19 months.
Right, yeah. There was always trying to outdo each other.
Right.
They always trying to outdress each other and out aftershave each other early on. Remember that? The asphyxiation from the aftershave from the pair of them was you could go in an hotel, you know which hotel room each of them was in. Because you could smell it down the lobby. I remember getting in a lift once in New York and I could smell the aftershave. I got in the one lift going up and it was Lagerfeld, so that was Shaun's, and then coming down it was Hugo Boss and it was Paul's.
So, did you get an impression though that there was something kind of deeper than your regular just brother to brother wrangling?
Outside the band, them and the respective partners would go on holiday together, they were friends. So they didn't have like, it was weird because I remember Paul didn't have a group of male friends and Shaun didn't have a group of male, you know, like they didn't go out but they were older, so they were both settled down. Shaun was married when we formed the band. And then Paul was with a girl called Steph, so no, and you know what? When I look back, they got on pretty well, early days. They got on quite well.
Okay, we're jumping ahead way here, but Paul talked about Shaun not wanting to do an album, like why he thought Shaun didn't want to do an album. Why do you think Shaun didn't want to do an album? Doesn't want to do an album?
What now?
Yeah.
With bands, it's different now. Now I've been out of it, and now I've got another band that I'm playing guitar and singing. It's different because when you're writing, when you're doing your music, what we did when the band, because it was all of us writing, you end up arguing. There's 4 or 5 opinions, and you end up compromising. So I don't think he wants to go through all that again because he doesn't have probably have to with Back Grape, and obviously Mark usually goes along with stuff, but me and Paul would be quite opinionated. So maybe it's because of that. Is that what Paul said? I don't know. What did Paul say?
He said that he didn't think Shaun wanted to help him and the rest of the band make money. Like he just wanted to have it all to himself, and he didn't have respect for them, for you all as musicians. He'd rather work with other people and try and pass it off as a money. Like that he just didn't have respect for the musicians.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe, it's hard to say, innit? It's definitely I don't know that, you can only speculate. Definitely the hassle of it all. Because I think the combination was all arguing, the chaos of us arguing made what made what was successful. But when you get to a certain age, you can't be arsed of it. Whether it's a thing about not wanting to hurt us or having respect, you know what, I don't know. I really don't know.
Couldn't you all come up with the music and then give it to him, and he comes up with the lyrics and the melodies? Like, does he even need to be involved in the actual mechanics of writing?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah. So maybe it is that. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, or maybe he just didn't like what we do or something. I don't know. You know, it's. I'm trying to be very diplomatic here. I don't know, but I just don't. It's hard, you know, because it's somewhat speculates. I really don't know. I mean, what do I really think deep down? Yeah, I just don't think he can be arsed working with us. Maybe it bothered me at the time, and then after that, I don't think, I started to think, and I remember talking to Paul and saying, even if everyone's agreed on doing an album, if you're not in a perfect place, I think it's a disaster. It's a recipe for disaster.
Okay, go back again to the very beginning. Tell me about how you came to be a part of the band.
Right, I was at school and we'd try to form a band. I'd had a bad injury to my hand, so I had to give up playing guitar. So I bought a drum kit, but I hadn't learned how to play it. And there was a girl in my class called Bev, who'd come from a military family in Germany. She had an older sister called Denise, who was about 5 years older, who was marrying a lad called Shaun, and I'd seen him around. She remember Shaun with bleached hair and having they looked like these Bowie kind of kids, you know, they stood out. And I'd met Paul years earlier, very briefly, because I had friends who went to his school, and Paul was a couple of years older than me. Shaun was about 5 years older. And then there's a lad in my class called Nigel Day, and he had an older brother called Mark Day, who was 5 years older, who was also in a band. And they were both saying they need a drummer, come and join this band. And I thought, it can't be the same band, because Shaun was this kind of Bowie type thing, and Mark was into heavy metal, Queen, so they can't be in the same band. So it confused me. So they said, oh, come down to rehearsals. And when I eventually went down, there was Mark and Shaun in the same room, and I went in, and Paul was very quiet, but it was obvious that he was kind of directing everything and sussing me out, and especially what I was wearing. And then after we went for a drink afterwards, then the second rehearsal, me and Paul got to talk about Echo and the Bunnymen and really hit off, and it was just, we got on from that day one, and that was it.
Did you have any idea when you were walking into that room that day that it would change your life as it did? Like, did you have any sense of this is something really big that's going to be...
No, not at all. No, never. None of us believed anything like that. I think Paul was the only one that ever thought that.
Really? So it was all a big surprise to you when things actually started to fall into place?
Yeah, even then, and I think that was frustrating for Paul as well. We didn't take it as serious.
Talk about the days of rehearsing in Mark's mum's loft.
I don't think we did that many there, you know. We probably only did about 5 or 6 there. It was a tiny loft in a terraced house. I used to go in and they had a piano. It was a terraced house, but the room was so small. They had the piano nailed up against the wall, so you could get past. It was off the wall. It was funny because we had a piano in our house, and Paul and Shaun had a piano in their house. It's really weird. So everyone had a piano in our house. My sister used to play piano, my older sister. And it was they used to pull the ladders down and go up, and it was this tiny room. It was there. It was Nigel's room. He used to have a stair. It was tiny. But I think we only did about 5 or 6 rehearsals. We didn't do many rehearsals there.
Were you allowed to smoke and drink and things like when you were younger?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Smoke and drank everywhere. Though Paul didn't smoke then. I didn't either.
Tell me why he said he didn't smoke.
Yeah, so we was in the Morning Star, the pub we used to go in after rehearsals, and I was 15, 16, and Paul was 18, most people smoked. I remember Shaun smoked number 6, and I remember saying to Paul, "How come you don't smoke?" And he said, "Oh, that to and fro with the arm just seems like too much exercise." Yeah, because he's never broke a sweat in his life. He drove everywhere. I've never seen him walk far. I mean, the furthest I've ever seen him walk is the furthest he'd park away from where we were. He drove everywhere.
It's true.
Wouldn't walk anywhere, drove everywhere.
And even when he was like 18, was he the same?
Yeah.
Because he used to play rugby when he was at school. He was really good at rugby, so he must have been pretty fit at that point. No?
Really?
Apparently.
I never knew that.
Yeah, he was really good at rugby.
Really?
Yeah. But this was when he was at school, not when he was in the band.
I never knew that. I never knew he played rugby.
Yeah?
I'd never seen him walk on grass.
Tell me about the first song that you wrote.
What was that one? Oh, I don't know. But maybe one called Red, or Weekend Starts Here, or some Red, I think. We used to do a couple of Joy Division covers and a Depeche Mode one. Then we did a couple of our own. Quite poppy, actually. I mean, but kind of. But all the early songs are bass driven. I mean, I'm not saying all these things because it's about Paul, but it's true. They were all bass driven. But then again, New Order was bass, and Joy Division were bass driven. Them kind of bands, some of the bands that we liked then, and the Echo and the Bunnymen were bass driven, So I can't remember what it was called. Maybe Red, a song called Red, I think, or what was the other one called? Comfort and Joy. That's some weird ones, yeah.
So were you in the band when there was Matt Carroll around, or had he already gone by the time you joined?
Well, Matt's not officially left yet, has he? He's never been told. Never been told. No, he'd left then. Yeah, it was just Paul, Shaun, and Mark. About a year in, PD started coming to rehearsals, but he wanted to be and then announced he wanted to be the bass player. And then Shaun said, "You can't. Our kid's a bass player." I remember the rehearsal, and then PD said, "Well, I want to be the drummer." He said, "You can't get a drummer." He said, "Well," so I said, "You can be the keyboard player. We haven't got a keyboard player." And PD was like, "No, that's for weirdos." So as he got a keyboard player, he had like a little Casio keyboard. It was that big, and Derek built him a big a keyboard stand which was twice the size of the keyboard. But when PD came and he couldn't really play, he learned to play as we went on the fly, which a lot of people did in the 80s. Depeche Mode thing, it was all that one finger thing. He changed the sound of the band. He really did. He had a big influence, PD. No, maybe he didn't realise he did, but we kind of changed. It kind of changed the style of it.
Okay, so you rose from the ranks of Mark's Loft to rehearsing in a school. Tell me about the school that you used to rehearse.
Well, it was also in school. It was a school I'd learned to read and write in, ironically. The very room I'd learned to read and write in, and right near where the desk where I was when I was 4 or 5 was where my drum kit was set up, where we first started the band, which is really weird. It was an old church school. And Mark's neighbour was the cleaner. That's how we had the keys and used to rent it off her.
Now, Paul tells a story about a record company executive coming to watch you. Tell me about that incident.
So Paul used to send these cassettes off to all the record companies. Always Paul did all that and info. And then some record label got back in touch. London Records it was, ironically. I was at the publishing. No, it was London because we went with the publishing there, London. And they said they're going to come up. And one of the head of A&R, I can't remember his name, Derek knew him because he'd signed, I think Paul had sent it to him because he'd signed a few bands from Manchester. So they arranged to come up. And it was an old school. It was like an old church. It had a big bay window. So we'd set up playing. And they turned up and they were from down south and they were always a bit nervous coming up north anyway. And it was in an area that was okay. It wasn't in a bad area or anything. But they packed up and said, "The car's okay outside." We were like, "Yeah, fine." It was a fine area. It wasn't a bad area or anything. And they came in and literally, halfway through the first song, a brick came through the gable end window. And I think it was an old girlfriend of mine, I'm not sure. Because she used to hang around there, we'd fallen out. And they all dived on the floor like we were under attack. And we said, "It's fine." We got up and and they went and checked the cars and they came back and they said, "Does that normally happen?" And Derek said, "Yeah, but they must be getting good." So they said, "Why?" He said, "Because..." It was only half a brick this time, something ridiculous, something stupid like that. We were all laughing, but they were scared to death. And then they said to us, we'll sign you if you get an image. And we was like, well, this is how we dress. They said, no, you've got to have an image, like Culture Club. We all just went, oh, fuck off. And then they got in touch about 2 weeks later and said they'd sign us on a deal if we changed our image and got a stylist. And we all just categorically just said, no chance, The clothes were important as the music for us then. And I'm glad we stuck by that.
Wow, that's incredible. I didn't know, Paul didn't say that. I didn't know that you'd actually been offered a deal by them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how good a deal it was, but they said we're happy to go to negotiations if...
On condition that you got a stylist. I mean,
and they were talking like Culture Club and all that, yeah.
What on earth would they have dressed you up as?
Duran. But that was it, and we all just said no straight away, no. I mean, it was kind of a surprise that anyone took any interest in us, so it wasn't any big deal, it wasn't like we'd been knocked back loads of times, so we were just like, no, absolutely not, no.
Amazing, I didn't know that at all, that's bonkers. Okay, tell me about your first gig. We've spoken to Jason about it and we've spoken to Kingo about it, so there's a lot of talk about this first gig. Tell me about it from your perspective.
Apparently, someone went in Kingo's Barbers this week, he said, doing podcasts, they're calling me from LA now. He said, I'm going to have to get some merch together. It's great, isn't it? It was at the Walder Community Centre, and ironically, it was a place where I'd gone in as a nursery. I'd gone nursery in that room, which is really weird. So it's, I know, it's really, really strange. And it was a Thursday night, and we did 3 Joy Division songs, 1 Depeche Mode song, and 2 of our own. One song called Saigon. We was obsessed by Vietnam, and this was this TV show on late at night. And we did a song about Vietnam, which we really liked, but Shaun hated it. And his lyrics were brilliant, but he hated it, so we never did it again. So we did that. And it kind of just passed everyone by. The people just went, all the local kids came and watched it. It was like, all right, I think, it was the height of Duran and pop music rather than kind of, I don't think most people had heard of Joy Division around there. So the people weren't impressed. So it was kind of just nothing of a gig, but just to get a gig under our belt, it was fun. It was brilliant. And then that's when PD joined afterwards, because we went outside and he wouldn't let anybody near us to talk to us. We said, we've got to get him in the band. So yeah, it was like a 20-minute set.
He wouldn't let anyone near you?
No, my band. So I don't remember it, but everyone was saying everybody was going, it's my band, keep away, keep away. I don't remember that, but that's what everyone else says happened. So someone said, you've got to get him in the band. So that night we went to the pub afterwards and asked him to join the band. I don't remember him doing that, but everyone said, even Matt, everyone says that's what he did. I can't remember, so.
Because he was protecting you. He was being protective.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Maybe he wanted to be your manager at the time.
No, I think he wanted to be in the band.
Oh, did he? Brilliant. Okay, so tell me about the recording of the very first single. You did a single first. Was it with Mike Pickering?
Mike Pickering in Bury, and we had a few songs. There was one called, I can't remember, Delightful, which is like a pop. We had about 5 songs, and Mike Pick chose 3, Delightful, Oasis, and is it This Feeling? This feels like, I think.
Yeah, did Bernard Sumner produce one of them as well?
He did Freaky Dancing. It was great, first time in the studio. It was just one day in Bury, we recorded them 3 songs. Oasis was a song we liked, but the fact we chose Delightful, it wasn't very different than what was out at the time. It kind of came and went with a whimper, it wasn't, but at least we'd started,
Okay, and then tell me about when you were in the studio with John Cale.
John Cale. So me and Phil Sachs had seen John Cale at the Hacienda, and we loved him. We all loved the Velvet Underground, but me and Phil were John Cale fans, where the rest were more Lou Reed. And we liked his solo stuff. Paul hated his solo stuff, and John, they all hated his solo, but me and Phil loved it. And we went to see him at the Hacienda, and then Phil, I think Tony Wilson might have been there, got into Tony Wilson and said, I've got to go John Cale, and he produced, I can't remember who else he produced a few people. And I think Iggy Pop and a few, I can't remember, I could be wrong, can't remember. So we agreed to do it, and it was just all we were bothered about. We had 3 weeks in London paid for. We were in this bed-sitting near Swiss Cottage, something park it was called, I can't remember what it was called. With a load of Geordie builders. We used to go back at night and just drink with them till the early hours. And we used to walk from Swiss Cottage, Belsize Park we stayed. We used to cut through Swiss Cottage Belsize Park to, it was next to the Town and Country Club. Remember the Town and Country Club in Kentish Town? It was right next door to there. We used to walk there every day, and it was like a community studio, and John Cale was in there, and he was going through a clean period. He was eating clementines all day and extra strong mints, and we were just getting started, drinking, drug taking, and smoking, you know. So it was a clash from the start. He didn't get us. I mean, classically trained. We recorded everything, and he said that's it. And then we went the next day, and he said, "No, let's start again." We didn't really have much contact with him. Didn't really get on with him that much. Didn't really have a lot of. He said I think he was a bit. Yeah, we didn't really make a lot of connection with him really. He just kind of acted as engineer. Yeah, it was not. That was kind of. Yeah, a bit disappointing really.
What do you think of the work that he did though?
Probably good for what he could get out of us. He was good. He was just probably us. They weren't the easiest to work with. And he just did. And Dave Young, who was his engineer, who we worked with, who ended up doing, I think, 24-hour party people, just didn't really understand us, didn't get it. Because he was saying, I remember him saying to us, the bass and drums are like really slow grooving and dragging it back. Is that because you don't know what you're doing, or is it on purpose? And we was like, well, it's kind of like we were kind of doing stone disco. And he was like, but you're an indie band, and we were like, well, we don't see ourselves as an indie band. And they didn't get that. We wanted to be this kind of like Velvet Underground funk band, if that makes sense.
Bummed. Let's go on to Bummed. So that was a different kettle of fish to John Cale, wasn't it? Working with Martin Hannett.
So we hadn't met Martin Hannett. So Martin Hannett was a bass player. So we wanted me and Paul to go up first to the studio. We booked in a studio called the Slaughterhouse in Driffield near Scarborough, North Yorkshire. So we had to pick him up, factory hired a car, and they said the only request from Martin Hannett was no Ford or no red car, because he hated red Fords. So of course me and Paul requested a red Ford and got one. We pulled up at his house in Charlton. Martin was outside smoking, and he just went, "Yeah, pair of bastards. We're going to get on fine." And we did. We got to Driffield, and the pubs were open. This was before the times when pubs were open all day. And the pubs were open all day. So we get to the studio, and the guy, we said, "Why?" He said, "Do you want to have a look around the new studio?" And we were like, "No, why the pub's open all day?" And he said, "It's market day, they're open all day." We went, "All day?" He went, "Yeah." We went, "We'll go to the pub then." He said, "Would you want to tour around the studio and see what equipment we've got?" And we went, "No." So we get to the pub, and Martin said, I've not drunk alcohol for 5 years, 4 or 5 years, can't remember at the time when it was. He said, I've not drank, I'll just have a Coca-Cola. Okay. I remember Paul saying, they've got a Stella on draft. So we ordered 2 pints of Stella, and Martin went, go on then, I'll have a Stella. So we had one. This was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Still there at 12:30 at night, midnight. We just drank right through the next day, and that became. We used to go there for breakfast. It was right next to the studio. We used to go there for breakfast every day, the beginning and the end. And then it was great bum because it was in this little studio. Martin Hannett didn't know. He hadn't been in a studio for years. It'd been kind of semi-digital, and the young boffin kid there was like, this bloke doesn't know what he's doing. And we were unsure whether he'd cut it anymore, because things had changed. And then about 5 days in, the guy in the studio went, yeah, he knows what he's doing. He's brilliant, but he's out of touch with all the technology. And we had a back room where we had a little sound system, a little ghetto blasters, and we had dance music from the Hacienda cassettes and the DJs and Mike Bick just on, and it was on 24 hours a day on loop. And there was a party going on there all the time for like weeks, and you'd go in and out, and that was it. But the music was nothing like that. But that's what I remember from it. And people coming up from Manchester, and see people from Manchester around this little farming village. It was quite funny. I enjoyed Bum was a really good time. Really good time.
Yeah. And how was Paul during that time?
That was the Ecstasy album of all things, so everyone was in really good mood. Everyone was getting along. Everything was really pleasant. It was really pleasure.
When you say the Ecstasy album, do you mean that you were all doing Ecstasy, or just that was the era?
We were all doing Ecstasy. And it was starting to be the era, yeah. But it was just a really good. And we should, like if you had a bit of time off, we'd drive the 2-3 hours back to Manchester to the Hacienda for the night, then drive back up. And with a few people and back, it was just a really good vibe. It was just a really good time. That was some of the best times, that Bummed album.
And then then the album was a big hit, wasn't it? That kind of launched you. What point did you feel like, oh, actually this is working now, we're actually making strides? Like, where did you feel like you being...
Probably 24 Hour Party People, the single, that maybe, after Tart Tart Party People, that kind of got... And Tart Tart was played on the chart show on a Sunday morning. And it got to number 1 in the indie charts. Indie charts was like kind of a big thing then. So that was when we started to gain people coming to the gigs. I mean, the first places we had an audience were London, Blackburn and Leeds. We couldn't get arrested in Manchester. Us and the Stone Roses couldn't get arrested. We're hated in Manchester. It was all that jingly jangly pop, and they hated us. The Manchester press, Manchester radio station, they all hated us, yeah.
And what changed that then?
Tony the Greek was playing some of our stuff. John Peel's session probably. John Peel's session was really good. That got us, that helped a lot. John Peel's session was really good. Yeah, Tony the Greek was one of the few people in Manchester. He had a radio show at night time. I think it might have been on Piccadilly. He was one of the few he was like the kind of Manchester kind of John Peel. He was the first one that used to play us and the Stone Roses.
But wasn't he also your press officer as well?
I don't know, he might have been. We had no idea. We didn't take it. I don't know, was it? Yeah.
There was this really brilliant, on YouTube, there's a schools programme, and it's hilarious. Like, it's for schools, and it's about the mechanics of the business, of the music business, through the eyes of the Happy Mondays and their crew. And there's a great bit of Tony.
I've seen that bit. That's the bit I've seen. Tony Wilson talking.
Tony the Greek is saying, I think it's Tony. One of them's saying they can't carry on not turning up for interviews, you know, and being unprofessional like this. And Tony Wilson says, well, to be honest, I quite like that. And it just
that sounds like Tony Wilson.
Brilliant. But the fact that it was part of a schools programme just was amazing to me.
I know, it's hilarious. I've seen clips of it. I know, I can't watch it. It's hilarious, isn't it? Yeah.
Why can you not watch it?
I can never watch anything of ourselves. I can never watch.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you remember, Paul talked about how significant it was that suddenly MTV were taking the band seriously. Do you remember that being a thing? Like being excited about being on MTV? No.
No.
Do you remember it being he said that the first time you were on TV was on The Other Side of Midnight. No, it was on the chart show, but the first TV you actually performed in was The Other Side of Midnight. Do you remember being excited about that? Yeah,
that was brilliant. That was a Sunday afternoon as well. That was a full all-day Sunday. Yeah, really, but nervous, yeah. I enjoyed. That was a great day as well, yeah. I remember that, yeah.
And that was literally because Tony was the presenter and he also ran the record label and Yeah. Did you feel then that you'd made it? Like, what was the point where you thought, oh, we've made it now?
Because like you say, I think Tony introduced us by saying, what does he say, something like, this isn't nepotism, it's pure devotion to the cause or something. I'm paraphrasing, but something like that. So no, we just thought we got on it because it was Tony, it was factory, you know. So no, not really. I remember the first time I thought we kind of made it. We was in the van going down to Brighton. I think Hallelujah just got in the charts. Remember they used to count down on a Sunday night, the chart show, and we arrived there and there was people outside the venue waiting to see us. And then we got in and the venue people were like, "What can we get you? What can we get you? Do you need anything?" And usually it's like, you know, you had to hassle for anything, and then suddenly it was like all of a sudden, you know, what can we get? You know, they wanted to, and I remember that distinctly. It was a Sunday night in Brighton.
Yeah, tell me about the day that you did Top of the Pops with the Roses.
So we got there. We didn't really know the Roses that well. They kept us apart in town. They were kind of from a different. Like, we used to see Manny would come in the Hacienda sometimes. We didn't really know them that well. We met them as we arrived there. They were on stage doing their run through. And we walked in and we'd both gone to Richard Crem, or Dick Cream as we called him, Richard Crem, to get our kitted out. And he'd give us all these designer clothes. And I'd got this black Gaultier top that zips up. And Ian had the red version, exactly the same. We walked in and we just went, oh, no, yeah. And then we met him in the bar and had a drink. And we got on with him really well. And I just that was really nervous. I was disappointed because we thought the BBC bar, I thought it'd be full of, like, you know, Nazis and Nazi soldiers and Roman soldiers and, you know, people dressed as cowboys and Indians, you know, and all that. And he was just a load of office staff. It was really boring. And we did it all because I remember we couldn't hear it, couldn't hear the playback on stage. having some time, and really, because you wouldn't grow up watching Top of the Pops since you was a kid, and I was scared to death, really, really petrified. And I think Paul, well, we all were. We was all petrified, I think. And
how can you mime the drums if you can't hear what's going on in your ear?
well, yeah, if you watch it and it starts off with the drums, it starts off and you can see like everyone's a little bit, yeah, it's hard. And when you look back and you know with experience, no one cares, no one sees, no one's looking, no one really bothers. But the moment you think you're the centre of the, not you yourself, but what you're doing is exposed to everything. You know what I mean? And you're like, and then I remember we stayed behind afterwards, and then Tina Turner was on doing a pre-record for the next show. And me and Paul all said, we've got to go and see Tina Turner. It's Tina Turner, you know, I can Tina Turner, I've got to go and see her. And we walked out, and Paul went for a cig, and it got locked out, we lost him. So probably just walking slow behind, you know what he's like. And me and Ian Brown went in and watched her do this finger, and she walked past, and Ian Brown went, yes, Tina. And she went, oh, you English boys. And I remember something like that. He says he said something else, but I think that's what she said. And Paul was really gutted and annoyed at us. He thought we'd left him on purpose. And that's all I remember. It was just a great day, but really, really nervous and scary day, that. That's probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life.
I was talking about this to Manny earlier, how there was no bitterness or rivalry at all between you and the Roses. Like, that's kind of quite incredible, really, when you think about it. Like, you really could have been pitted against each other, couldn't you?
Well, but when we got there, we met him in the bar with a drink, and we said, no one really knows who we are. So me and Manny were going to swap places. In fact, for the next rehearsal, I went up to play bass, and Manny was going to play drums. And because we thought they wouldn't know the bass player and drummer, they're not going to know the difference. And I actually think I got his guitar on Mech, and Manny might, or he might say, I can't remember a long time. One of us actually got on stage. I think it might have been me because they were rehearsing before, and someone had heard and said to the producer, they hadn't even noticed the producer, and they said, if you do this, you'll never be on telly again. So we're like,
recording Pills and Thrills. Tell me about LA.
Oh wow! I remember we arrived. He always remember where we stayed, Paul. I think it was Pasadena way. Was it Pasadena way?
Burbank,
that was it. But it's the other side of LA to Hollywood, isn't it? So we used to drive there every day. And I remember arriving the first day, and there's a traffic jam leading off the motorway, and there's someone up front arguing with these builders, and there was a big fight. We pulled off eventually to get to the studio, and then half an hour later, Bez comes running in. I had the car, just got into a fight on the motorway. Like, Christ, I've only been here a day. And Thingy had been in the studio. I said to the guy who'd been in the studio before, and he said, Whitney Houston had been in. And I said, oh, that must have been boring, Whitney, because she was like this. And he went, oh no, it was great. He told us all these stories, and we were like, no, we thought he was being sarcastic. How little did we know. And that was a good atmosphere as well. We stayed at the work. But I remember being at what was them apartments called again?
Oakwood Apartments. Paul
got married there as well, and Bez, he had to come in to get me and PD, and Bez went to the wrong block and knocked on the wrong door. We came out, me and PD, and they'd gone. But I remember leaving one day, he was in the jacuzzi, which was at ground level. He said, have you got a light, Gaz? I went, no, and I'd been out all day, come back, and he went, have you got a light? I went, your room's there, have you not got out? He went, nah, just been getting lights off people going past. And he literally he must have been in the jacuzzi for 8-10 hours.
How do you get on with Paul Oakenfold and Steve Osbourne?
Well, Paul Oakenfold's nice. Steve Osbourne was like the tall, skinny guy. He had like big eyes and like a nervous twitch, and because he had these big eyes, Paul called him Yikes. Paul nicknamed him Yikes. And it's funny because Paul would say, oh, yikes, and I knew what he meant straight away, and I'd just crying, like, you knew with his...
Did he have a name for Paul Oakenfold?
We didn't, actually, no. No, we didn't. I remember he turned up in he had a car, he had a red Mustang convertible. We was all like, you fucking cockney, of course you have, you know what I mean? But he was lovely. He was really, really sweet, Paul Oakenfold. I must say, really sweet. We didn't have a nickname for him, actually. It's funny, he was one of the few people who didn't. We didn't have a nickname for him. No, we didn't. But he was lovely, Paul Oakenfold. He was really, and Paul got on really well because he knew his old funk records and soul records. So Paul got on with him really well. And he used to have a booth and he used to play records. No, we got on. Oaken was lovely. Really nice bloke.
Yeah. And what do you think of what he did to the music? Like, how much of an influence would you credit him?
A lot. I mean, he was. Steve Osbourne did all the technical stuff. Oakenfold would play records and say, listen to this groove, this is that, and he got, and what he did, like God's Cop, that drum groove, was really, Oakenfold was playing with these old soul records. But I say it was perfect for Paul, because the songs that Paul knew or liked or didn't know they were old ones, so we got with him really well. I think a massive influence on that album. I'd say at the time, I didn't think he did. And we kind of give all the credit to Osbourne, but looking back, Oakenfold had a massive influence on it. And I think it was Bez's idea to get Oakenfold and get a DJ, because Bez had been out in a beef and said, the DJs, they're producing dance records, I don't know why they shouldn't produce bands. I'm sure it was an off-the-cuff comment by Bez.
Really? How?
Yeah.
So, any memories of any nights out, particularly any antics that you and Paul got up to when you were in LA?
You all the gossip, don't you? I remember. I remember with Soul to Soul were playing at. It wasn't the Hollywood Bowl. It was another place. No, it was indoors. A bigger arena. So we turned up there, and I don't know what we'd had. We'd had something. I can't remember what it was. What had we had? What had we taken? Taken something. And we turned up there, and it was like we got on the guest list through the record label in America. And obviously 7 of us, all off our nut and drunk, and we turn up, and obviously it's America. Soul to Soul were the only white people in the audience. And we're like halfway up at the back, and about 3 songs in, we're all just like dancing off our head, and the crowd are turning, looking at us. And then someone from Soul to Soul points up to the singers, and he's like, and they're getting like, and like they're looking at us, people are looking at us, and then they're back watching the band, and all that. And then afterwards, there was a party at the hotel. We got there, and Jazzy B wouldn't let us in. One of the dancers was from Manchester. From what side he said you can't let it in. You ruined the show.
Ruined the show? Why?
Because people were fascinated by these 7 white limeys dancing in the middle of the audience. The first week we got there, midweek, because we were staying at the Roosevelt on Hollywood Boulevard. It's Hollywood Boulevard. Literally on the corner. And it's a bit tacky. The hotel was great, but the place was tacky. And Paul took me to it might have been the Ritz around the corner to see the Chili Peppers. I hadn't seen the Chili Peppers. I'd never seen them before. And they were just, I think they might have Blood Sugar Magic out. It was early, it was 1990. And he said, you love this. And they blew me away. They were just mind-blowing. I remember Paul got me into them. He'd arranged tickets or passes, guests to go in. So I'm thinking the second night there, I was like, I don't want to go. He went, no, you've got to come and watch him. To influence the album, yeah. So I remember that, yeah.
And tell me about Paul's wedding in Calabasas.
Well, I didn't go, did I? Because we was waiting to go. So we was ready to leave to go up to the hills to get married in Calabasas. We didn't know. And me and PD were in a room, so they said, we'll come up and knock on the door, we're ready to leave. So me and PD sat there like, no one's come. So we walked down like half an hour later, they'd gone. Then later, he said, we knocked on your door, he didn't answer. So Paul was a bit upset, obviously. And then about a year later, we talked about it. He sent Bez up to come and get us. And Bez went, yeah, you were in the first block right there. We went, no, we were in the second block. He's knocking on the wrong door, weren't he?
So you missed the wedding?
But yeah, because Bez thought it was funny. But at least Paul knew it wasn't.
Did you not even go to the party afterwards?
Yeah, because it was round the pool and Paul was in the hot tub all night.
Oh, right, that was when he was in the hot tub. Right, okay. Yeah. Talk about being on tour and what Paul was like in those days when you were on tour.
He was always stressing to make sure everything was right, and a bit annoyed at us all not taking it too serious. He used to take it really serious, always. But you have to have one of them in the band like that, you have to. And he used to get stressed that we all didn't take it too serious. So he used to be stressed a lot. Not stressed as in, he wasn't kicking off or getting angry, but you could see, you get the disappointment stare off him, the disappointment look.
Oh, really? What was that?
But you could see he'd get stressed about how things were. He was always asking questions about the venue, about he used to get stressed at the time. So I didn't realise this is with hindsight. I didn't take much notice of it. I was younger and drinking too much.
Now we need to talk about Barbados and that whole debacle. Now, Paul had very fond memories of Barbados, said it was great, loved Chris and Tina, and basically said the only issue was Shaun not really being able to produce his lyrics. But other than that, and he really loved that album as well. I don't know how. Do you agree with that? Was it the same for you? Or?
Yeah. 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 I mean, Paul was ill though. The first week we got there, Paul was really ill, having really bad stomach pains, and they took him to the hospital, got him checked and all that, and it turned out later that I think it happened years later, and they said it was anxiety. We had really bad stomach. I mean, really, we thought he had appendicitis.
Didn't he have pancreatitis for a while? I think he'd had a.
Oh, did he actually have that? Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
I vaguely remember. I mean, he was a bit of a hypochondriac sometimes, wasn't he? So you never quite knew.
Don't know, I am, so I don't know.
Proper pair, the two of you.
Proper pair, yeah. I have fond memories of it. I got there the first week, so we were in with Chris and Tina doing it the first week, so we didn't see all the madness. And then the first day we hired a car, and me and Paul just drove around the island. And then we started recording. So we weren't privy to it all the first week. We were stuck in the studio.
Right. And what was it like for you? What was your perception of the whole time there?
The old trip. It was fine at first. Then Vanessa came over. We rented a house in the middle of Barbados. Then we used to drive in and check every day. And I could see it was getting a bit nuts each day, you know, with cars upside down. And it was a bit nuts. And like locals walking around dressed like they were from Salford. And it was very, very weird. And it was... the best was one day we'd gone in the studio. And outside the studio was a swimming pool on a higher level. Bez was already in the hospital because he'd turned the Jeep over and smashed his arm in. And someone said, come have a look at this. We went outside to the swimming pool and they'd made a crack den out of the sun loungers. Like a proper crack den. Just smoke coming out of the sun loungers. And the distance was this Jeep turned upside down that Bez had left, and the rental company couldn't go and get it because it was in the middle of the jungle, you know. But I had fond memories of it. But I kind of resigned myself to the fact that it was over. You know, it was over the band, so I just thought, you know. But yeah, my favourite album as well. I think it's Shaun's the only one who don't like that album. I think it's Bez's favourite album, Rowetta's, Paul's mine, yeah. I don't know about Mark, but yeah.
No, I really like that album too. I mean, I didn't like the tracks so much that didn't have lyrics on them. I think that...
I think some of his best lyrics as well. I think, I don't know. There's only one song that didn't end up with vocals on, isn't there?
Sunshine and Love is my favourite Mondays song. You know, you like that one as well, don't you?
I wanted that to be the single, and I was outvoted by Shaun and Paul, actually. Outvoted because I wanted that as the first single. And then when that came out, it's when Factory lost their distribution deal. So it was stuck in the warehouse on the shelf. So that messes up.
Yeah. So one of Paul's big bugbears was that the Mondays got blamed for Factory going under, and he says it wasn't the Mondays. Can you back that up too?
Yeah, not true. I mean, we kind of got pushed to go and do that album, even though we'd only half written it, because I don't think New Order had done an album for a while. So they relied on New Order and us for a little bit of funding because they'd signed all these bands. So we were pushed into it. When we actually split up, Factory owed us money. When the Factory went bankrupt, they owed us money. So it was quite the opposite. And the album didn't cost a lot to do. People think it was Barbados, it cost a lot of money. It didn't. The studio was cheap, and the flights were cheap. It was like it wasn't that, because we got a choice. They said to us, Manchester, Amsterdam, or Barbados. So Manchester was out, never got anything done. Amsterdam, can you imagine? Still be there, wouldn't we? Yeah, let's do Barbados. Little did we know. But no, I had a good time. I have nothing but pleasant memories from it.
Paul wasn't doing heroin at that point, was he? Or was he? Had he just started?
Right, this is what I think. This is what, just before we went, I'd caught him. We'd rehearsed New Order's place in Cheetham Hill. And it's the one and only time I ever saw him do it. The first time he did it. And I just said, oh, you dick. And he went, and he was like, you know. And we spoke about that since. He said he was embarrassed, but obviously once he'd had it, he wasn't embarrassed. And I think he'd been dabbling before then. I could be wrong though. And I thought the stomach pains might have been something to do. But I don't know. I can't base it on anything, all the gut instinct.
It probably was. Well, he says that he first picked up heroin when he found out that Alison had cheated, which would be a year after he got married, which would be, he got married in the summer of 1990. So that would have been like the summer of 91. When was Yes Please?
Was it 92? January 92? Was it 93? 92.
So he was already using then at that point?
92, yeah. Oh, there you go then, yeah. So you're right then, yeah. Yeah, so that was my gut instinct, so yeah, so that would be right then, yeah. Yeah, that would make sense.
So tell me what it felt like to be really, to witness your best friend just spiralling into the depths of despair and addiction and going from being great to being terrible. What was that like?
Yeah, it was gut-wrenching. Yeah, that's the thing as well. I think it might have been the Allison thing, and I think maybe, and this is just my opinion, I think that was an excuse. I think he was using it because he could see the demise of his dream ending in the band, and he'd lost control, and also that we all knew it was ending, but obviously he took it a lot worse than all. We all took it quite bad, but he took it. I always thought it was an excuse. I could be wrong, you know.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right, definitely. I think it was probably always only a matter of time before he picked it up.
Yeah, and it was really, really sad, disappointing, because I knew as well, not only was it my best mate I was losing, but also that from a selfish point of view, I knew that was definitely the end of the band. You know what I mean? If Paul wasn't functioning, you know, it wasn't happening. Yeah. And he knew that I knew that he knew that I knew that I knew that he knew. You know. Right.
And how did you cope with that? How did you relate to him once he'd started using? How did you deal with it?
I just started. Well, I pretty much just used to drink more, so drinking was my thing. And it's funny because I was saying like last time we spoke that we both ended up in Meadowbrook. Mine was only a day thing. I only went. He was in there like proper section. I only went one for a day, you know. Mine wasn't really, you know, like his. And mine ended up being because a malaria tablet I'd taken.
But did you say to him, "What are you doing?" Did you actually articulate how you were feeling?
Yeah, but you know what? You can't tell. You know, you don't care. You know, he used to lie to me, and I used to go, "I know you're lying." And he knew that I knew he was lying. And you knew that, I knew that I knew that he knew that. He was like, you know, but yeah, but we just kind of just, but I knew why he was doing it, why I was dealing with it, and we're all kind of doing our own things. We had our own friends by then, all doing different things anyway.
So tell me about the day that it all ended, that one day, what happened that day?
I don't remember it actually.
Well, was it not the record company meeting when Shaun didn't show up? Wasn't that really when it all fell apart?
No, I think that was one. No, we carried on for a while after that, I think. But it'd been not long after, but it'd been coming. We'd been rehearsing at different times, and I wasn't getting on with Paul then. I think me and Mark would do the day shift. Paul and Shaun would do the night shift. I think I can't remember. I know it was definitely, we were just doing recording in there, one at a time. And then I remember Paul saying, why don't you start at 6? I said, why don't you start at 2? And you know, no one would agree, no one would budge and give in.
Right. And what were you actually what were you recording at that point? Because this was after you.
Just demos for a new album.
Do you have any of that material? Do you have any of those songs still?
No, Simon H had it all, so I don't know what happened to it. It was a weird time because we all kind of buried our heads in the sand and was in denial. But we were in denial, but we were in denial with each other. But we all knew it was over. But with each other, we was in denial it was over. And I think since Paul was doing that, then I was going out drinking more. And I met Vanessa and I'd moved, and we just wasn't. Me and Paul didn't have a relationship anymore either.
And then he had a full-on breakdown, and you were a really good friend to him at that point. You went to see him every day. Like how was that time for you?
Yeah, it was really sad. I mean, we had a good laugh in the nut house. We had a good, when we went to go and see him, we had a good laugh. Some of the stories we're telling about people, but it was really sad. He didn't seem, he was completely aware why he was there. He wasn't like he was, which was even kind of more upsetting. But me and Paul struggled to function just on a normal basis for life. He dealt with it with heroin, I dealt with it with alcohol, or both had anxiety. We both struggled to function. So we're very different but very similar. I can't do anything. I really can't do anything. Honestly, I've struggled. I'm just useless at everything. But that's part of, the band doing everything for us as well,
So, you used to go and see him and he'd grown a long James Anderson beard. Did you think he would get out of that? Did you think it was temporary, or were you worried that was it? He was stuck in like a mental health.
Yeah, I thought he wouldn't get out of it. I don't remember him having a beard.
Do you not? He grew a big James Anderson long beard, yeah.
Did he?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. That's weird. I don't remember that. You've got to have a beard though if you're in them places, haven't you? You got to have a beard and chain smoke.
Do you feel like his breakdown was brought on by losing the band or by being a heroin addict? Like, what do you think was the cause fundamentally? The band. That's why he was a band. I think the band, and when you're like anxious and not being able to function on a basic level, a band's a great family for you because it's really easy. Things are done for you. You get excuses made for you, you know. And once that ends, you're out in the real world and exposed, and it's you know. But I think he was more open about not being able to function. I tried to pretend I could, but he didn't, and I think I had it better than him. Did you ever feel like you were on the verge of a breakdown as well, apart from your malaria tablet episode?
Yeah, a few times, yeah. I had a couple of episodes. But then I just think it was his baby, you know what I mean? It was his thing.
In that time, you went to music college.
Living across America, me and Vanessa, I got back and I said to my mum, I need something to do. So she booked me on that course in Unity. I said to Paul, and she told Linda. Linda said, oh, Paul, you do it as well. So we went on this music production course and met him it.
Right. So this was in 98. So there'd been a period of about 5 or 6 years where he was just languishing. He was with Estrella for a while, in and out of using heroin, and then the two of you went on this music production course. Were you then aspiring to maybe do something together again when you were doing that course?
Don't know. I don't know. We just ended up, and we were just being friends again. That was the most important. That was the main thing, and having a laugh together. We both had them little Volvo cars, and we used to drive up there the day. So I remember that was a good time as well. They were good days. No, we were just being friends. We were just being friends again more than anything.
Yeah, he had a white one with lights that came up like that.
He had a white one. I had a blue one. Yeah.
So 1999, reformation of the band, right? So you must have been excited about that, or were you worried? Like, what were your feelings around that? You hadn't worked together for 6 years. PD and Mark weren't involved, but it was you, Paul, Shaun, Bez, Rowetta, Wags, and Ben Leach.
I remember being in the studio and recreating all the songs with Ben Leach. Me and Paul sat around the computer with Ben.
Lee Mullen as well was involved, wasn't he?
And Lee Mullen percussion, that's all I remember. I don't really remember anything else about bad times. I remember recreating all the backing tracks, spending a month in the studio just doing that with Ben, with Posh Scouse. I don't remember anything else from that era, to be honest with you. You know what? I don't remember lots of things. Paul remembers everything. I don't remember half the things. Because maybe it's just a way of dealing with it and erased it all, but I don't remember lots of stuff I don't remember.
Paul tells a very funny story about when you did a gig in Wembley and you said to him after the show, I've done it. Tell me that story.
You can't talk about that these days. I've done it, I wanted to play Wembley. And that's what I... Come on, what did he say? See if it's the same. I can't really remember.
You'd done this gig at Wembley. It was your first ever gig at Wembley. And you went up to Paul and you went, I've done it. And he said, yeah, we finally played Wembley. And you said, no. I finally wore women's underwear on stage for the whole night. Is that right?
Was that the Wembley gig? All right.
Is that how you remember it?
No, I don't remember that. But we were Spinal Tap.
That's all we have for you this week. We're playing out with another of Gaz's tracks from his side project from the Mondays. It's called Love and the Family Tree, and the song is called Peace Assassins. Please keep watching this YouTube channel because If you're watching this at the premiere, we're going to be going to a live stream right now featuring Gaz Whelan, and if you've signed up to join our club, you can be on the Zoom call, which is going to be live streamed as well, and some of our patrons are going to be asking Gaz their questions, and he might even play a bit of music. So that is literally going to be happening right now, straight after this show, streaming to this YouTube channel. So please do join us. If you want to be on the call, it's not too late. Just go and sign up to join the club at patreon.com/the Paul Ryder tapes, and you can get the login details to be on the call. You don't have to be a paying patron to sign up and be in our club. After the live stream, next week's podcast episode is going to be dropping on all of the usual podcast platforms, and the next episode features the very first Monday's manager, the lovely Phil Sachs. The video version, of course, of that will premiere here next week, Sunday the 3rd of March at 8 p.m. UK time as usual. I promised to name check our patrons, so these are the names of the people who are helping us to bring these episodes to you every week. We're so grateful to you. And here we go. Stephen Wood, Jeff Tidy, Steve Ness, Michael Smith, Simon Gilroy, Mark Duffy, Mark Musgrove, Mike Thomas, Chris Barton, Paul Larkin, David Green, Joseph Davis, Kieran Cuddy, Lee Duval, Dean Whitaker, Tom Ryan, Nick Earl, Nick G, Stephen Merriman, the lovely Jacoby Good, and our new member, Gary Thurkle. So, follow us on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. I think we have a TikTok as well, actually. And have a brilliant week, and we'll be back same time, same place next week. Big love and thanks to Gaz Whelan, and of course to the man himself, the late, great Paul Anthony Ryder. Thanks for being here, all of you, and have a lovely week. Bye.
No man knows the way. Productions.